Greetings. I almost got into it with an individual because I said something about the Jews, and the funny thing about racists and white supremacists and these types of individuals who share this common pathology, and yet to believe you're supreme or superior to anybody because your skin color is white is a mental illness. I almost got into it because I was thinking about this Nakba and these Jews. And in an episode of Homeland, the Jewish dude actually said something that I liked. He said it to his sister. He said, "Why would you want to stay here if you know that your mere presence is a cause for war?" Now, I said something about the Jews, and I said, it's a pity Hitler didn't get them on. And he started to say I was anti-Semitic and a whole lot of stuff. But you see, racism and white supremacy require ignorance to survive, and he clearly is ignorant of a lot of things. The Jews fund almost every war to date, both sides. Where do they get the money from? They were mercenaries. And this Holocaust that people talk about and that they make such a big hullabaloo about, I'm almost certain that there was so-called Jewish collusion. And I said Jewish because Israel today is 70 years old. The Bible talks about an Israel. The Bible supposedly refers to things as Jesus thousands of years ago. Israel is not thousands of years old. The state of Israel as we know it today is not thousands of years old. It's 70 years old. So these people who are usurping this name of Jews and Israelites and all this other bullcrap according to the Bible are not the people the Bible is supposedly referring to. It would be absurd to believe so. Israel was made through the Balfour Agreement with England and a few other nations 70 years ago to allow squatters a land to reside after they were refugees in Europe. Today they're slaughtering Palestinians. So I said something about against that, and in his ignorance he calls me a racist. Now one of the things is Africans have proven that they can be racist. Africans can be racist. We can't even be racist in Africa. Why? Because to be racist means you have to have systems in place to deliberately disenfranchise a certain group of people because of skin color, religious belief, or whatever the case may be. In America, the school system starts with lies, teaching all about all these white successes, and the only thing that Africans contributed to history is slavery. Now think about that. We built pyramids hundreds of thousands of years ago, but all we were was slaves. And this is another thing you hear the Jews, these so-called Jewish people talking about. They were slaves of building pyramids in Egypt. If you believe that the people in the current state of Israel today were at any time building pyramids in Africa, then yeah, I got some beachfront property on the sun for sale. So you got multiple instances where this mental illness and this entitlement manifests itself. A lot of them talk about the deplorable state of African nations, but they don't talk about how they have sucked African nations and still suck African nations of their resources to this day. And they have tariffs and sanctions in place to strangle them. Haiti is a prime example. And France, had it not been for the African former colonies of France and Haiti paying them tributes or whatever the crap they are made to pay, they are enforced, they have to pay every year. France would have been worse than a third world country in Europe. But because America and England and the rest of these European nations all collude in making sure that these countries pay France with sanctions in place, and then they talk about we don't pick up ourselves by our own bootstraps, and their apologetics about slavery. It is all hypocrisy. So when you say things like they are ruthless, heartless, soulless, immoral, brutal, unconscionable beings, you might be classified as racist or inciting race hate. But it is the truth. They do not hold on to power throughout the world because of their sophistication and their high morality. It is because of their ruthlessness and their brutality, and because of their the affinity for violence. We, natives of the earth, were always loving and nurturing, and that is the only way they have been able to invade every corner of the earth and slaughter natives the way they did. Because they are a brutal, ruthless group of people. History shows it. Look at it today. Today, almost every year you got hundreds of African Americans slaughtered in the streets by police, so-called law enforcement officers. Just modernized slave catchers. They always walk. They always walk. How can you not see the PTSD, as you call it, in the African community? They have carried out so-called scientific tests to prove that trauma from the Holocaust still affects Jews today. Yet somehow or the other, they have in their minds negated the fact that Africans also feel trauma, because in their mind, for them to have carried out the acts that they did in history, and for them to still carry on the acts that they do, they have to disconnect the fact that we are equal. And in reality, if there was any superiority, it would be the African, because genetically, naturally, we are the dominant gene. This is nature. This isn't my invention. But we don't fight for black supremacy. Nature already decided that. And the funny thing is, the ones who run around the world as the morality enforcers and all these other sophisticated are the most brutal, most ruthless, most heartless, most soulless, immoral beings on the planet. And they're they're inferior genetically to every human ethnicity on earth. But we allow this. Why? Because of our ignorance of history. We still believe that aliens came and built pyramids, and then Africa just was a continent of slaves. That we were in darkness, and then Europeans came and they invented the light bulb. That Africans were savages, and Hippocrates was the father of medicine. Imhotep is recorded as the first multi-genius. He made pyramids, he wrote books, and he wrote pharmacology and surgery books. There are actually pyramid engravings of surgical tools that he used that are still in use today. But these are facts that will never be taught in your school history curriculum, because it will undo the lies they have perpetuated. And thus, the way I began this, that white supremacy and racism and all these things require mentally ill individuals. And in conclusion, because this is the way it is worldwide, you can conclude that worldwide the majority of people who classify themselves as white, who see themselves as white, have a mental illness, as long as they think that being white makes them superior to anybody else. Because in reality, that simple fact makes them inferior to all other humans. And now if we go in on intellect, you cannot judge the African, because the conditions of unrest, of instability that they have created made it almost impossible for the Africans to progress. And yet still, we still strive. So think about that. Had the European endured at the hands of Africans what the Africans have endured at the hands of Europeans, this world probably would have been a different place. It probably been very small, considering the nature of the European. He'd have probably tried to bomb it to ash. But we are a peaceful people. But for a while, wake up, wise up, and rise up. Black Lives Matter, and Rastafari lives.